All right, is everybody ready? All right, let's get started. Looks like everybody's here. All right, welcome to the session. Engage 2026 in Ghent, Belgium. It is the blueprint for sovereign AI. So welcome to that problem as well. That's the other problem we had. Okay, this one we can actually talk a lot, which is good. So if you have questions, we don't have to run through, exactly slide by slide. Like I said, he did the BSI earlier, the in-depth part of the BSI stuff. We're going to talk about the overall blueprint for bringing the AI to be more sovereign. So, agenda for the day. Paradigm shift. We're going to talk about digital sovereignty, right? Which is the BSI. We'll get into governance, regulation for a moment before we jump over into actually how do we put this all together. They also took the power strip with them. So, they said they really wanted to be in this room bad, didn't they? They took everything entirely. There we go. So here's where we have to start. From AI as a service to AI as an actual asset. One of the biggest problems we have now is that organizations themselves are treating AI as a service, right? To your users, to the other companies you offer to, whatever you're doing. It's not, it's your asset, right? It's all about the data that you maintain now. It's about your history. It's about your archives. If you saw the partner session earlier, he talked about actually importing documents back into Domino to start using more AI. The problem is the sovereignty of all the small pieces, right? So residency, where it sits, that got into BSI for data residency. And I'm gonna make all these slides available in the video and everything else. The actual infrastructure, which we talk about in this session a lot. And lastly, the algorithmic part. Where do you do the work against that AI data? That can't happen in the cloud if I'm gonna be truly sovereign. Right? It can't happen out on someone else's infrastructure. I can't pass other pieces out. So basically, you don't rent your core IP, you own it. It's an asset. So AI isn't a service. It's become an asset. And a lot of the IT groups aren't looking at it as such. And that is a problem that they're having, is they're not looking at it. So what is the difference between the two? AI sovereignty versus sovereign AI. And I had someone ask me this, so I actually threw together a slide. But to summarize this, and this, like I said, will be available so you can read it in depth. But sovereign AI gives you the infrastructure to reach AI sovereignty. So as you pull this data apart, right, governance and control, build it on top of the infrastructure and hardware, that's the two pieces together that have AI sovereignty and sovereign AI. They have to work together. If you have one half, the model's still broken. If I have my data in the wrong place, but I'm processing it local, it's broken, right? If I have my data local, I'm processing in the cloud on someone else's infrastructure, it's broken. So I can't have full sovereignty unless both are in play, okay? So the components, one side is, hardware, one side is the data residency and operational. Is it on, is it not? And there's your BSI under operational. Is there auditing, is there DR? When did it happen? But where did it happen? Where were the components also? Where are the regional data centers? Are they my own? So these two pieces all work together to make sovereign AI. Objective about the horsepower and mandates, that falls into architecture decisions versus regulations, which we're going to talk about. So the idea of this slide is to show you there is a difference between the two, but without both, you can't truly be sovereign. So this is a quick one about, we all know about the dates that everything came into play, right? New laws in California, APAC, Europe, everywhere. The big one is the bottom right, shadow. Shadow AI is probably one of our big killers right now. Yes, if you haven't played around understanding what shadow AI is, have no fear, I made a slide for it. All right? And for those of you who've seen me present before, I don't do a lot of slides. Usually everything I do is hands-on, we're doing live work. This one, it's about building your infrastructure. I'm talking to many companies right now about this entire layout with Domino IQ. And their big question is, where do I put it? How much do I need to run it? How much does it cost me? We're going to talk about all those pieces. But the big part in this one is shadow AI. Because as we talk about sovereignty and AI sovereignty, are they taking my data and taking it to other places? And that's the big part of this. So here's the gap with shadow AI. And this is huge. I did this as a good example in a session with a customer. And I said, hey, so what are you doing? They said, well, we're taking some of our documents and we're scrubbing them, making sure there's no information from our company or customer, nothing referenceable. And they uploaded it. I said, great. Now I want you to query some other fields. Well, guess what? Every document they'd uploaded had metadata. The metadata of the company was already up there. The document itself had no information about the company, but the metadata did. Who created it, where it was stored, what drive it was in, right? What their company name was, because their document templates had all that information, then passed to the metadata, which then went out to the shadow AI. So they had thought by leaving their environment with a clean document that outside public known server, right? We won't say which one, but it might be Microsoft. Okay? But that service of Copilot didn't have the information about their company because they thought they'd cleansed their documents. They hadn't cleansed them. They had left data inside of them they just didn't see, but the AI did, right? It's all encompassing. So shadow AI is a big problem because a lot of your employees are taking your information and then running it in other AI systems that they think they've cleaned up or they've cleaned out. And that's a huge gap in AI sovereignty, is those shadow AIs. Unknown servers and services, other prompts that they've either taken from them or learned. There's no oversight. Even though you pay for a Copilot subscription, there's no oversight, right? There's no really good view of what they're putting out there, what they're using it against in terms of your data. Accountability is a big part of that. Please.
Shadow AI?
Yeah.
Do you mean you uploaded some stuff and you literally that you don't know what's happened to it?
Correct.
Is that what you mean?
That too, or there's data in it you think has been scrubbed
Yeah.
that has now been passed on to public AI systems. So picture you do as a test, you throw something out there for a customer. No, I'm cleaning it out so I don't have your company information. I've taken your name tag. This is a good example. Taking your name tag and scrubbed everything off the front. Don't have your name, don't have your company, all that. Picture that QR code as the metadata on the document. Right. AI still reads that. It understands that metadata. So you've left something out there. You've left a piece of information. And I've put it into a cloud segment that I don't know where else it goes. Because if you think about it, most of the cloud providers that you deal with are the fun ones that pop up, all the AI. Fun fact, what is the largest growing domain name right now there is? Top level domain? .ai. Largest growing. And who owns .ai? Anyone? No. No, it's a top level domain, which was assigned years and years ago, right, by ICANN. Yes, it is. They have now made, in the month of February and March, more than their total gross annual income normally for that country. Thank you, Anguilla. The training leak was a big one at the top. It was a big part that I wanted to put at the top is competitors or yourselves or your team may leak some sort of your private algorithms or data that you use internally, accidentally testing out a new AI. So that gets us to where we want to contain it all, right? We all understand that. We want to bring it in-house. So that's the big part. If you were late, I don't know what to tell you. I'll catch you up later for those of you that wandered in late. And the other one about the part is at the bottom, and that's these APIs, right? Workflow coupling with external systems. I become dependent on the ability of some workflow app that may make calls to the outside world, or may utilize one of the other LLMs, or may utilize a service that's out there, right? I didn't know I'd be with a counter in the middle. Sorry, I put stuff low, all right? So the accountability is not there, and who owns all those gateways and firewalls? So this is what we need. We need a bridge, right? We don't necessarily need a wall. We need a bridge. The bridge lets us secure an audit and be sovereign, right? But lets people and things in and out that we control, we audit, we govern. Back old castle days, here we are in Ghent. It was a perfect, I should put a castle up there instead. Right? It gives you the idea. I controlled who entered and who didn't with the moat around it, right? That's our sovereign. That's what we control, the land around it. So step one is sanctioned alternatives, tools that you can do. You will have to use outside AI tools. It's going to happen. Your company's going to want outside tools, right? They're going to want to use an outside service. But we talked about the metadata. What are they passing? And that's the part that you all miss is what are they passing after they've scrubbed the document? Are they leaving metadata and other things on there? Then we enforce that DOM, right? We route all our queries through something we control. Auditable, we get into BSI. Auditable, trackable, traceable. Who did it? When was it done, right? Where did it go to? Was it local? Was it outside world? And then we get the sovereignty inside because we now know the data location and where it is. So how do we get there? This is leading into my next session. This is the only slide on zero trust, but it's leading to the next session, is about building this whole approach of first zero trust, but bringing everything, cold storage and archives, into some local model, right? Complete isolation from these global training sets. They're taking your data and training their own. Think about what Sora just did. Did anybody use Sora for a few months? Sora was amazing. For free, it was out there. You could create these 10-second videos. Amazing quality and prompts. I've got some on my phone if you want to see some later. It has me scoring a World Cup goal. right? It's absolutely amazing. I slide across the grass on my knees. They're up hugging me. I'm sweating. It was amazing. They did it, used it, trained it for months for free to everybody. They said, yeah, we're going to turn that off because we're going to bring that back inside now and make it part of a paid product. But we just literally for months for free train them. That's what our users are doing today every time we go out there and actually put our corporate data into some of those AIs. We're also training them, right? It's not just about leaking data. We're training other people's AIs. Our users aren't training our own. We're not inside doing that. And that's one of the biggest pieces of cost we get to in a few minutes. So shadow AI removal is another key part of this. We're going to get rid of that shadow AI. And if you came in late, shadow AI is your users jumping out and using other AI systems, thinking they're using clean data, but they're still leaking part of yours through things like metadata, accidental leaks, but usually it's like metadata about documents. This is a word I heard once, but I've run with it. Right now, I'm the only one that's actually kind of using it. I hope so because I'm going to be blogging about it more. You'll probably see. Tokenomics. The cost of running a token AI request. Everything has a cost. So when we build this next leap into Domino, think about how many of you, let's say, take a poll. How many of you, when you ask your AI to do something, say, can you please do whatever for me? Who says please? Who says thank you or says something else in? But you say please. Can you please? Can you? Not necessary. Please, not necessary. Thank you, not necessary. But what I do with all those? I ate token cost. Now imagine your 30,000 users. Can you please help me with the, because they're being polite to the AI. They're not giving instructions, they're being polite. Remember the old days of programmers, punch cards. For those that have seen references, I didn't say you're that old. I didn't say you were that old. I said, hey, remember, punch cards, they had to fit so much onto a card, so they shrank their commands down. Tokenomics is about shrinking your commands down. Every request costs you money, right? And when we get into sovereign AI, that's a huge infrastructure cost, right? Because we can look at numbers, we can talk about those other pieces. You're going to get into the fact that the more information you put in, the more it costs you. And tokenomics to me is, who do I charge back for using these tokens in the environment? So when I become a sovereign AI against my terabytes of Domino data that I'm now querying randomly, that's going to cost me thousands. Remember the years when chat came out? Same time first came out. We went to IBM and we sat with them, or actually it was Lotus then actually, and sat with them and said, hey, the chat part needs to be free. It's a commodity. It's like your dial tone. You pick it up and you just want to be able to talk to somebody. And they said, never. They did. They told us, never in a million years is that going to be free. Oh, 4 years later, chat's free. Remember? Limited use, same time, free. Summarization to me now is a commodity. The ability to summarize a document and summarize something, because that's what we all do, right? That was the first release of IQ. That's a commodity. Your users expect that ability. That costs you money. Even though it's sovereign, it's your data, it costs you money to do that. That's what tokenomics is. So now every time I run a query, mainly with RAG integration, so I'm vectorizing millions of documents, thousands and millions and hundreds of millions of documents in some companies. That's a lot of money I'm going to, eat up, okay, because of the hardware. It's perpetual. It grows exponentially. Hardware costs drop. Usage grows. So you're still going to eat that cost. So keep that in mind with tokenomics. So what we do is we move it, OpEx to CapEx, right? Things that you're going to take decades of dark data that you haven't touched and say, they would like, bring it in. Why? It's historical that helps the AI train and learn, and I can see models and trends in my company. So I'm pulling stuff out of cloud and cold storage, putting it into some other storage to get it away from those nasty vendors and bringing in Domino, right? Sovereign AI or any other AI system. Of course, I'm going to use Domino just because that's what we're here for, but picture any AI system, all right? So how does it fit in with Domino IQ? This is part of sovereign AI. Insert a name if you want, but I'm HCL now. So has anyone not seen me present before? Is there any newcomers here? Oh, I apologize in advance to both of you. The rest of them know. Two things. I speak fast in English and I only get faster. It never gets slower. And I always have more content that's in my slides, but this year we're down to 45 minutes instead of an hour. So I wish you the best because we have more to go through. Some of these people have suffered through me for years now. Most of the information you'll always find later. And yes, I've restarted my blog back up because HCL, So all my stuff online is IdoNotes. If you search any history of Domino stuff, usually I pop up in a blog post somewhere. I have one of the biggest podcast series there was. I've stopped at episode 150, I think. So they want me to start that again. But this will be out there. So we'll talk about the new stuff, sovereignty and the other pieces. So where does Domino IQ fit in? Of course, it's all your stuff, right? It's autonomous. It's inside your environment. You control it. You control the firewall. You can mode it. You know what the cost is today. You don't know the AI cost. You have no clue what the AI cost. It's going to be huge. And then it has the compliance. So with IQ, now we're offline. We can accessible for everything, JavaScript, Lotus script, and rich file support. The biggest customer we've had just had us import pretty much their entire SharePoint drive back into Domino to get it out of the cloud, to get it out of Microsoft. Was it terabytes of data? No. Was it massive? Yes. Did it consume a lot of space on their side? Yes. But guess what? They had that space before. They just dumped those files out long ago. So we just re-imported it back in, fired up Domino IQ to then start utilizing it. Now, this wasn't 14.5.1 with RAG, but just the original, to start utilizing it and getting it built and ready because we knew the RAG stuff was coming. The idea being is they wanted to control their data, get it out of the clouds, and be sovereign about it, right? And have total isolation. They didn't want any shadow AI going on. They wanted to restrict where it went. They wanted to control who it went to. That's where this came in, was Domino IQ. So this is the architecture. You've probably seen this in other ones, but the big part to us is that secure boundary that you now build, even with the inference engines. Now, let's talk about the LLMs, because the LLMs over there, I forgot, laser pointer's on here. The LLMs are on here. You can still point out to external LLMs if you want to, but now I'm back to the point of I'm not sovereign anymore. However, if a developer needs one piece of content from some AI engine that's out there, right? Think about it. They need some workflow, some specialized AI that's been built. Maybe it has its own tech and it's been trained in some model your company needs. You can put an IQ server, they build it into their script nodes, go through that IQ query. So you can have multiple IQ together with one config, and you tell them which model has the answer you need, and it'll route that to that. Does that make sense? So you can use both. You're controlling what they use for the outside engine. They're not taking your data, exporting, doing whatever, pasting or copying into unknown engines. You're controlling the flow and the boundary, which is that whole secure boundary line. So you build that moat, you know who goes across the bridge. That's the whole point of that. So don't think you're talking about only using Domino IQ. I mean, that's HCL would love that, of course, but that's not your only solution. You can now build an infrastructure that allows controlled access and models and auditing and logging, right? That's the part I like. And there's 2 new classes, but everybody's seen those classes in the other sessions. So what's behind some of the hardware costs that I'm going to have? Pretty big. Your data source is the same, but you can import back in all your rich text. Now, updal, right, the -W, process the data, the new embedding, and the vector storage. We haven't even talked about the hardware costs to do all this, right? You saw Tim talk in the opening session, and who else was up there? That was Thomas was up there and said, oh yeah, well, what if we run on this GPU, this CPU? That's all great, but let's talk enterprise scale today, right? What I need to do to roll out the door today. We're talking huge NVIDIA servers. We're talking large scale machines. We're talking heavy processing power, and we're talking what? Tokenomics. The amount of instant how many of you just play around with your AIs currently? Just issue random stuff. Just talk to it on a daily basis, because you don't know or think about the cost behind the scenes as an enterprise of what that's costing to run. Your enterprise subscribes currently to one of the services. That's all. Millions of tokens. They just burn through them like it's nothing, right? It's like your kids at a pizza place, right, with video games. They're just burning through tokens. To them, they have no idea how much that really cost you. It's a US thing probably, but that's what they do, right? You give them a game card that's preloaded. They don't know that game cost 14 tokens to play. They also don't know the game 3 over only costs 8 tokens to play. To them, it's just a game, right? But to you, that's a lot of money as an enterprise. So if you think about it that way, in value, they've handed you a preloaded card with these AI services. You don't think about the economics that are behind it, okay? So this is what happens with a sovereign query. So when I run my own environment, my own engines, my own LLM, my own inference, this is what happens. The user makes a request securely to the Domino server. This is the best part, right? It's secure. We all turned on port encryption, right? Forced port encryption. Yes, everyone just say yes. Because it's SSL if it's web, but we all turned on port encryption. Forced. Domino doesn't Here's the beauty of it. If you remember back to when they actually gave us both port compression and port encryption, right? What does Domino do first? Think about it. Compresses the traffic, wraps it in an encryption level, and sends it on. What does a VPN do? Just wraps it in a bubble securely and sends it. Doesn't care how big the package is. Domino said, I'm going to give you both. I'm going to give you compression and encryption all together. It's a beautiful feature. A lot of places we go to don't have one or the other on all the time. We're like, why are you not forcing both? Well, we don't worry about bandwidth. Well, that was 1998. Okay, we've really come beyond that at this point in time. They also go, well, how much bandwidth are you using? They go, we don't know. No one knows. No one ever knows. The network team never knows why it sits inside your own environment. You just treat it as an appliance, right? You don't think about it as eating a bandwidth. But now with the hardware, it's a cost. So you take the request, it'll jump in, it'll make the semantic search. So it'll match the prompt that was given, or the application makes the prompt for them, or the user's doing it. Picture summarization again, out the window. Everyone's going to do it all day. When they open their email, they're going to expect the sidebar to summarize the content or the presentation of the email. It's going to be a commodity. It's going to eat up your tokens, right? Because that commodity is going to be big if they're opening apps and they expect a summary of every single document in there all the time. And the session earlier, I can't remember who did it upstairs in the D room, that they summarize documents once and store the summary if you're in that session. So it never has to be summarized again. It's an old document. Why would I re-summarize it every time I open it? And now I'm reusing tokens to play the same game over and over and over. So he summarizes it once, saves that summary, and references that summary. It's a beautiful solution, right? I love that solution. That's actually, yes, I'm going to steal that one. That one's coming with me. Only because it's a beautiful idea that you're taking old data and bringing in, or you're accessing archive data that never changes. Why haven't I built a summary for that and already stored it with that document? So the AI doesn't have to do it every time a user goes back to that document, right? Comes back to the notes IDs, grabs the documents, the prompt goes out to the engine, which we hope is local, dumps it back to the server to the user. I've just done a full loop, full query inside my own AI resources and engine, but I've had to eat the cost to do that, right? Everything's within your zero trust boundary. Everything's within your own sovereign AI. Everything's inside of your entire environment you built. Now, the guardrails. This is one of the best parts about sovereign AI is guardrails, because I can control what they push through and what comes back out. I can control things they actually ask of the AI engine, right? I can build these technical guardrails that I can't get sometimes in other engines. And why is that? I don't know what guardrails they've built in. So think about that as well. You really don't know the true guardrails of another AI until you push it to the boundaries. But now as administrators and people that own businesses and partners that are going to customers, I can help them set the guardrails in advance for their users. They know what those are. Why? I control it, right? It's a moat. Everything inside of it. I can log everything, right? So I want to go to, get everything logged. I've got all the logging that I need for security purposes. I can see the audit history and the logging. I've got the jailbreaks, prompt injection, which is huge for all the engines. You see that all the time in the news, don't you? They got the engine to do this because there was no guardrails, or they tested the guardrails to death to find out exactly what they wanted to get out of it. How far will that AI go? Right? We want to control that, but you do. And then the paraphrasing engine, intercept and evaluate. Start looking what the users are doing for prompts and help build better prompting around it. Will save you tokens, back to tokenomics, in the long run. Because if I can grab and understand the semantics, right? And I can understand what they're going to do, I can actually do data scrubbing and paraphrasing, simplify requests, rebuild prompts, use fewer tokens after I pass it to the engine. Now I've saved them time, saved resources, and I've given them back the answer they want, right? And I can sanitize it for response time. I love the sanitization. The only reason I like that is because now I control what the user also gets back, and I make sure it's been cleansed because it's your data. So guess what applies? And when we get into sanitization, you need to understand one part about this. It makes the request, the user's not going to be able to get data that they don't have access to because it's Domino, right? If there's a reader or an ACL or some other access that's on those documents, they can't see it. They're not going to get the answer back through prompt injection because they can't. ACLs apply to that data that's there. So that's another part of that sovereign AI boundary that doesn't exist in other systems. And this is probably one of the biggest selling points we've had in services, which is where I sit in the ecosystem of HCL as services. is the ability to say your ACLs still apply to all that data. So you're not just loading up bulk data and then getting requests back. You're now able to control that. And a lot of companies go, so we need to revisit and fix our ACLs. Go, yeah. When was that done? They go, 2000 and something, right? They never revisit it. They've never gone back. They don't have a reason to. It's been out there working for years. That's one of the beauties of it. We have an R5 customer. I said it. R5 that came to services the other day. They've got tons of data. They're out in California, which, if you're familiar, some of you, with the laws, they are the step behind GDPR as a state in the US. They're always right behind. Whatever they do with GDPR, California's like, we want that, and they put it in play. The other 49 states go, let us know how it goes. We'll get to it when we get to it. The idea is that you can now use your ACLs to your benefit to not only restrict yourself as a sovereign AI supplier, but also who can see what data inside that data lake. And a lot of engines don't have that security control wrapped around it just yet either, right? If you upload a ton of data out to Copilot that's loaded into Copilot, everybody that has access to that Copilot sees it. If you're using your inference engine in Domino IQ to access the data in database, the ACLs apply. That's a huge difference. Renting versus owning. We have to stop on this one for a minute. So my history is, for the two new people that haven't seen me before. So I was at a startup in 98 through 2018. We were the largest hosting and managed service provider for IBM Domino for years. So we did infrastructure hosting, we did remote management, all that. So we got into basically scaling for users to come to us and say, we want to put servers in your environment, let you manage to do it for us. So I understand that model, right? We loved it, but we knew how much you would consume. That's blown away with the cost right now for AI for tokens, right? These fees will get you in the long run. And when I say fees, the cost, like I said, for you to run it and how you're going to bill it back. So I'm talking to a lot of companies and I say, are you going to bill back the other departments for the tokens that they use? They say, well, what do you mean? I said, well, they're going to use a bunch of tokens. Who's going to pay for it? They go, well, I guess IT's absorbing that. I said, oh, good luck. I said, you probably bill them back for license costs, don't you now? Like a lot of companies will. Oh, we have 1,000 licenses. Every department pays their couple 150 users. Oh, you need 10 more Visio licenses. Well, you pay those out of your budget. AI is not free, right? We don't just turn it on and you get it for free. So what do we get? Data residency. Right now, you're renting, right? It's jurisdictional. You understand that's why we're here for sovereign. It's an external service. It's out there somewhere. We don't appreciate everywhere it is. We've heard the words many times that are in here, right? From the Googles to the Microsofts to everybody else. Or you're just using someone's rented data center that's not your own. You don't know who else, has access to some of that stuff. Domino IQ or a sovereign AI, it's going to be locked in. It's your environment. Where you put that, if you want to put that in one of the, certified data centers like an IONOS, great. If you have it in your own data center, great. Whatever that rule is. But you control where that data sits entirely when you do these models. The cost model's big though. If it's my own AI system, I pretty much control and know what that cost model is on the back end. And I can help my users understand that. Right? And I can reduce and paraphrase. And I can better scrub the data. And I can reduce their token usage. If it's on the outside, either you're paying a per API fee or guess what? You just have a subscription and you have no idea what that cost is. And as you grow, what do? They come back to you and go, yeah, so you used 23 million tokens last month. You need to talk about moving up to the 50 million token platform. That's out there. You've seen the smaller models do what? 2 million tokens, 3 million tokens, a month of free 1,000 tokens, whatever it is they do, because they know how much it costs them to run that. You haven't thought about that for your own environment yet. The governance readiness, listen, every one of you probably in a different country, different rules, different regulations that you have to face and go through. The local solves a lot of that, but the infrastructure cost eats into a lot of that, right? That's that whole CapEx type conversation versus OpEx. So we get out of the tech and we get into money, actual dollars, and the ownership. This, to me, is still one of the biggest ones, is the shadow AI. And it's not a selling point really to me, but it's just I drive it home with the companies to understand that the users today, some of you may be at fault now, you're thinking about it yourself. Hey, I've loaded something up into Gemini, or I loaded something up into another service. But you didn't think about the fact that you thought you scrubbed the data, but did I really scrub the data? Is it all gone, or did I give something away for free to them? Or even worse, like a Sora, did I help them train a model they're now reselling based upon data I've already given them? And that's a big part too. Your model has to train something. So let's add in one more cost that hasn't been on these slides. And this is no matter what system you choose, I don't care if it's sovereign, I don't care if it's hyperscale, it doesn't matter where it sits to me. No company I've talked to have right now put into their mind the cost to train AI models on your own data. Think about that. Forget your knowledge as a person that does Domino infrastructure, installation, config, whatever it is, the data, their own data. A lot of people that had knowledge of that data are gone, right? AI will make the same mistake today and it'll make it again tomorrow until you train it not to do it. If you ask it the same question 2 days in a row and you've never told it again, it forgets. AI doesn't remember and adjust itself. That's in the back end. That's the vector, that's the configuration, that's the training models that you use to build the responses. But if right now you went to Gemini and asked it a question and you came back tomorrow and asked it the same question, it's going to give you a different answer or it's going to make the same mistake unless it's some hard, cold fact. But even in summarization, it makes differences and variances. It doesn't give you the same answer. So now picture the person cost. Who's going to train the model that you're going sovereign with? I've installed the LLM. I've RAG enabled my databases. I've vectorized all the data. I've got it in there. Who's going to tell it what's right when my company wants to research 20 years of our product data? Well, half the guys are gone, right? I'm pulling archive data, cold lake data. Who's going to actually train this thing to give me the proper responses? Or if the response comes back, is it right? Who can verify the data is right? And I've asked that question a lot. I said, well, who can verify it? Like, well, what do you mean? It came from our data. I go, yes, but who can right now tell me that's right so you can say this is a trained model and it's 99.8% accurate? So if you haven't done it, good try, is there's a Gen AI model that Google has in their learning platform. It's usually free that you can walk through some of their courses. And one of them, they have you go in and you see how a vector image database is made and you have to identify horses. And you go in and they got 3 images that kind of look like a horse, but it may not be a horse, but the image thing thinks it's a horse and you got to tell if it's a horse or not. So the answer is, it may come back to you. Sometimes it go, I think this other one's a horse. You go, why would you think it's a horse? And other times it goes, that doesn't look like a horse. Same model, same images, same vector. No one's trained it yet, right? So there's a big difference in your own corporate data of what is valuable or not, or what the response should be, because it may overlook data that you have. And that's a huge person cost that you have. So this is the ecosystem, the whole thing. The bottom right is where we're getting to. So your data's up there, all your loose documents, all your NSFs, all the stuff you put in cold storage. The engine's there now. It's built in, it's native, it looks at your data. We know what a Domino server costs to run. All of us do, because they've been running in your closet for 20 years at home, right? We've all been there before. But no, we don't have what Jason had at his house with $20,000 in hardware from the keynote and fiber. Trust me, that's not in the budget that we're in. I don't know what budget that was. It wasn't in my budget. I wish it was in my budget, but it wasn't there. Some of us are running, Kubernetes, setups on a NAS at home, things like that to test things out. But think about it. It's you and, playing around. It's not the true cost of running infrastructure. The sovereign infrastructure, the actual factory that does the work, is these NVIDIA GPUs, accelerated computing, the storage options, the backup of the data, right? You might be out there in the IONOS sovereign cloud. Wherever it is, there's a cost factor around that. Then there's the compute power of processing that's around that, the tokens, right? Like I said, the tokenomics. And that is growing at every company we deal with pretty fast. As they release more features and you enable more databases and you enable more cool things and your developers get to play in, they need something else, tokens grow and grow and grow. Because no one's governing the prompts and no one's governing and scrubbing the data and no one's training the back-end vector enough. So what you're getting is just the wild west of token usage as the usage of those NVIDIA hardware grows. And soon I've got a huge capital expense, right? I've got to buy more things. I've got operational expense. I got people to manage it. I've got more power. I've got more cooling. I've got all these costs to get wrapped up around it because we think we're enabling our company with more AI, and all we're doing is just letting them play. We're not driving the value and understanding the cost to get that value. That's what this session is about. When I say sovereign AI, it's not just about deploying it inside your own little closet and giving a few users access and now allowing them to go outside world. There's a huge growth thing that you need that runs around this. Imagine the heat that a plant that runs Gemini with their data centers runs, just the heat. Right? Forget about the electricity, forget about the output, the heat of running all these GPUs that's in there that they've got to clear out. And I don't know what they're doing in other countries, but I know a big hot topic right now in the US is the actual problem. They don't want data centers in their local areas for fear of clean water usage and power usage and drawback usage, all these things, because that's a true cost. But that's at the grand scale. Now take that down to your company scale of how fast that's growing and think about that. Or when you're dealing with a company, if you're a partner, okay? This is the path. And I don't care if it's HCL AI, just put HCL, but I don't care which one it is. You got to go back in, build the boundary. We're going to talk about zero trust in my next session, but build the boundary and become sovereign. Right? Bringing in your data, bringing in the models, understanding how much it's going to cost me once I start bringing this in, build the tokenomics. Get a good idea of the cost to run a query against that environment. Get an idea of the cost. It includes the hardware, the people, the training. That's a real number. You can come up with that number. It's a real number. Is it rock solid right now? Could I give you a formula yet? No, because no one's truly RAG-enabled their entire Domino environment that I've seen on a grand scale. Not talking a small scale, I'm talking a huge scale, right? We're talking terabytes of data, re-imported things, right? Sucked them in like a vacuum and brought all our SharePoint data back. And now every database is ready, RAG-enabled and vectorized, and I've got the hardware in place. I haven't seen that number yet. I've seen them slowly grow and deploy Domino IQ on a server here and there, do this. Then we're going to get the groundwork in. You got to select your actual engine. What engine are you going to choose? What LLM will you pick? How many are there right now in the catalog? Like Hugging Face, how many are there out there? A couple hundred, easy. Yeah, easy. That are quality. A lot of people develop their own, but they're quality. That are well tested and out there, kind of like open source that you trust. There's easily a couple hundred out there that you have to choose from to be your own sovereign AI. And then I need to decide which ones I want to be able to parse out, right? Send across the bridge, across the moat, to actually go out and grab a few workflow things of scrub data. Why? Because my Domino IQ engine can actually say, just that request, yeah, you go over there because we don't do that. Or I need that component that company makes to work with my data that's inside. That world exists. You always got to trade from somewhere, right? We're always not an island. All the way back through the days, you always had some sort of little trade because they make something you don't have. So maybe they make a workflow or an engine piece that they won't give you to run on-prem that you actually have to get from them. You can parse that out and say, Domino IQ can go out there and get that one thing, but you control that and you can audit it. And then you start scaling, right? HCL is going to put new APIs in there. They're going to put new calls, new class, new stuff that gives me hives, right? Development stuff, things I don't want to think about. Just tell me what you need to run it. I don't care what little code you write because I don't know what you wrote. It could do anything. I have no idea. Then we secure it, and that's the part where we fit back in. It's making sure it's locked down because it will obey ACLs, reader fields, all that stuff. Encrypted fields, it obeys those. You can't get around them. I can't prompt injection myself around an ACL setting. I can't prompt injection myself around an encrypted field. I don't have that secret key. I'm not in that reader field. I can't get around it, right? That's the beauty of it. Now, if you write code that's bad or you have bad ACLs, well, that's a different problem. The AI is just following what's my rule on software? Those have been in my session. Software does two things and only two things. Does anybody remember what the two things are? This is a golden rule. If you remember this, software is so easy. What you let it do, which is the defaults that get installed. So whenever you deploy software, whatever defaults they decided, that's what you let it do. And then what you tell it to do. And that's any configuration change you make on your own. That's all software does. It doesn't wake up and change itself. It doesn't wake up and go, I'm going to encrypt that database, but leave that one unencrypted. No, you decided that because that's not a default. Or everything's encrypted because that was the default that they chose. Domino didn't do that. What did Domino set? Think about it. Default, no, read, author to their own document, but everybody could read the directory. Those are all defaults. But I went in and started messing with group settings and who can edit groups and who can run agents and who can be a signer of an agent. What's a trusted server? That's what I let the server do. It follows those rules. Whereas other ones that are big data lakes don't necessarily follow those rules. Right? And that's not just a selling thing that's just Domino as a whole. That has nothing to do with the LLM and the engines. That's just us as Domino. It follows the rules. IQ has to follow those rules. You can't get around that. I can't call another user's ID as a person in a prompt to make that happen, right? That's actually coding that you've done on the back end side. Okay, questions on sovereign AI since we have 3 minutes left, or maybe 4 because they stuck me on time at the end. Did I fit it in? I started. Did I fit it in? I got there. So as a whole, I had to cover a lot, like I said, in 45 minutes. But I want you to understand it's a journey to get to this point. Zero trust is later, but it's a journey to get to this point, only because most of the people don't understand everything that I need, and the hardware cost is just a small piece of it. That's a fixed cost as you grow. It's just fixed. I can't help you fix it. I can't make it better until they make processors that run cheaper and just as efficient, and that's just a fixed cost. But the hidden cost is what we talked about on a lot of it. Questions, anything? Or was that boring? Say, go for it, Rich.
I was saying, if there's a halfway house, if you've got what's a negotiated Azure tenancy with things like data centers where you know where the data is based, things like that, and tenanted Copilot, does that change the nature of?
Yeah, and so Copilot's separate. So your data residency are using your own keys, bring your own key, BYOK. So if they do BYOK, that means they put their data right under their own key structure. So BYOK says, I'm going to take my key that I've wrote to Azure, I've sent it out, and I've controlled that. But Copilot is a data set that's a big subpart of Copilot, but it's not just mine. Copilot, they don't just go, oh, I'm just going to install Copilot on your one server here in your environment. Good luck. Copilot's still being utilized from other resources. They slice a piece off. The guarantee they have is none. I can't find a guarantee that says it will never leave that environment or never leak, or we may not have to use this set as a failover cluster, right? It's a global scale. So you're renting a piece inside their data set. Now, their data at rest, BYOK, is covered. We have a bank that does that. They have a BYOK inside one of our cloud environments, so we don't know their keys. They've used Domino, right, to encrypt the data. So Domino is encrypted locally. Then they do at-rest encryption with BYOK. So we can't read any of that locally, even if we took a hard drive out of an invisible machine in the cloud, right? Can't do that. But once they push data out to Gemini or Copilot, even though it's their subscription, there's no guarantee where that goes. But you could, based on what we do earlier, split off components later to only query certain things from that environment and everything else stays inside. So that is a win for everybody. It gives you both. No, it's a good question. No one can guarantee where Copilot goes that I've seen. They'll tell you it's in a country, yes, but where? Well, we use all of those. We use 8 data centers in this country. Okay, well, which one has ours? Yeah, those, it's what it is. You had a question?
I was just wondering about the word scrubbing. What does that mean?
Scrubbing, removing parts of prompts or scrubbing responses of things that come back for inappropriate behaviors, guardrails, guidance, things you can build in to remove certain things. So prompt injection on the way in, scrub requests so they can't do certain things, and requests that come back out. I'm not talking about scrubbing data based upon, because they're going to get what they had access to, but cleansing and looking at what's inside of those requests themselves. So a guardrail more than anything. So the ability, though, that you can control, and you can actually, as the developer, you can have them type in 3 or 4 things, and you can build your own prompts, which that is part of the scrubbing process, because you're controlling the prompt action for them on the back end through the class, the notes classes. So you get to control the prompt request. They're giving you the input that they want, and you control the request. So you've scrubbed that again. Where you could also then trim that request down, tokenomics. You get rid of all the extra stuff, the please, the thank you, the can I, may I need this. And when they say the model we made in 2004 and the color was blue, 2004 model, whatever it is. So you've shrunk that whole request down and scrubbed it to this little, request. And it's only going to give them back the data that they had access to, unless you do something, crazy in the back end with signers and give them access bigger. Yeah.
And are these guardrails implemented deterministic or also using Gen AI but smaller models, cheaper models?
Cheaper models. Yeah. Cheaper models. Yeah, you could. That's another thing too, is the ability to parse out to different models based on different needs, but also cheaper models if you need for certain requests. That's a beautiful feature. That's a great point, actually. So certain requests that come in don't need a high scale, high volume cost model. You can parse that out to a low model for like summarization type stuff. That's a great tokenomics one right there. Taking their request, guardrail, and also a little scrubbing. I call it a little scrubbing because you're seeing what type of request it is and passing that off to a cheap model to run, because I don't need a 4.7, whatever it is. I want to send it down to a 2.0 cheap model. I'm going to save money, same result. How many times have you tried to figure out what model you should choose for something? They try to tell you faster, quicker, high end, deep dive. You're like, yeah, whatever, give me the best, because you don't care about the tokens. I don't want them. Those people will choose the best every time because it's free to them, right? If you laid out 4 variations of coffee upstairs, most of the people would choose the best, right? Not many of you would choose the grocery store brand. You'd go for one of the name brands that were upstairs, only because it was free. Yeah.
I mean, in this scenario, that would mean multiple Domino IQ servers, right?
Correct. Correct. 1 per 1, but I can parse a request based upon a need to whichever server I want. But you put those all together in the config, right? All those IQ servers, but you don't need a high-end server either then. So I don't need as beefy a server to run that same result because it's a low-end model with low, usage and doesn't do a lot of work, low tokens. That's a great one. And that's a good way to offload. And that same thing applies now when I said when you go to an external LLM, is I have another IQ server that passes those requests out. There's different servers for every LLM, if that wasn't clear. It's a great point. So every LLM needs a Domino IQ server, but they work together as a whole.
So if you could set this stuff up such that you've got total sovereignty, it never actually has to go out and query anything and come back again.
Yeah.
Where does the tokenization come into it? Do you pay per use of the model that you're hosting?
Yes, there's a cost with that model, and the number of tokens you ingest is usage on that model and the GPU. So there's a hard cost with the more stuff you pass through it.
Okay, so that's like how a licensing model is designed to
Yep.
use this.
Exactly. Tokenomics is that hard cost of the more requests and processing you use of that whole system, right? It's an entire thing, not just the GPU, but the whole thing, the power, the heat, the cooling, everything that goes into it, and then the processing, and that's all one big thing. And I can pass so many tokens through that takes this much energy to run. And those have hard numbers, right? And the more that company or group or user or subsidiary of my company puts through that LLM, that's a hard cost. Eventually they'll be doing based on the number of requests they're doing, which can be then counted, right? Words, tokens that they've used and passed through. Yeah, tokenomics is going to be, I think it's going to be big, just because controlling costs is going to become a factor later. Right now it's, let's go. Let's get it out there. Let's run. I'll give you the investment. We got the money. And then someone eventually is going to go, whoa, as we say in the US, pump the brakes. Hold on. We're outrunning value at this point. We're just doing things. So how do we control that? Yep.
Is Domino logging that information at the moment?
No, it's not. And a lot of that goes to the back end too. The hard cost of what it takes to operate the server. Domino IQ doesn't see that. Now it'll see the number of types of requests, number of requests. No, it doesn't log that. That's not part of the logging. I'm gonna go upstairs and talk to some people. I might have some people on direct. I might be able to do this in a few minutes and actually ask those questions. They hate when I ask those questions. Anything else before I would go? Because I know we got a few minutes before the next one. And plus I told them they could come back and do more Linux here in a minute anyway. So good? Yeah, thank you all. So, one more, yep.
So the small language model.
Yes.
Is there any chance that there might be a Domino IQ that uses small language models and so doesn't need the bigger NVIDIA
Well,
chips and stuff?
you choose the model.
Yeah.
So that's up to you. To your point, you choose the model you want for the IQ for the local.
Do you need the NVIDIA chips then?
Normally, yes. It'd have to be something really light with not a lot of users at this point.
So it might work then.
It might. I mean, but you're talking a handful of users on a very small requested type machine. You're not talking anything of scale. And how much vectorization data, we're not talking about the actual back end yet either.
I was just thinking about the Guardrails stuff.
Yeah, you'd need something very small with a very small company and very small usage to make that work on a low-end chip right now. And you expect delays.
Yeah. Okay.
And expect delays.
I might put it in that.
Yeah. Okay, let's have a break. I'll see you all a little bit. Thank you all. Appreciate you coming. Appreciate you coming downstairs, because I know coming to the basement was very rough for everybody involved.